Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, send me you time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast with me, your host, Harry Simeon. On today's show, we're looking ahead to that big game against Brentford. Every game is a big game for the Arsenal this season. We're looking to compete on multiple fronts. We're not just looking to compete. In fact, we're looking to win on multiple fronts. And that means that every game has something riding on it. Every game has a level of importance that you cannot overlook. You just can't. I know that after the game on Sunday, where Arsenal looked a little bit leggy and a little bit tired at points, and after the game where Arsenal were probably sort of feeling as though, yeah, you know, going to Stamford Bridge on the surface level of things and getting a point, it's not a bad result. But when they go down to 10 men, you start to look at it in a slightly different way, don't you? And I talked about this quite a bit over the last few days on the pod. After that, there might be a temptation to rotate. You know, we've all talked about it all season long. Look at the squad, look at the squad, look at the squad. Is tonight the time to use the squad? Is tonight the time to say, I'm going to put my faith in the likes of maybe Christian Norgard and various others that haven't played that much in order to protect some of our more, if you like, key players, because we've got a trip to Aston Villa coming up at the weekend. These are all questions that I'm sure Mikel Arteta will be asking himself. These are all questions that I'm sure will be being discussed within the confines of London Colney in the lead up to this game. But I just can't see the heavy rotation that some people are calling for. I just can't see it. I think it's a game, as I say, of huge importance. Mikel Arteta doesn't strike me as the type of person to look beyond the game that's on the horizon. It's kind of like, let's do this, let's do the job here, and then we'll focus on Villa after that. And I kind of feel like, on the one hand, that can be problematic, because if you don't put that faith and trust in the squad, there will come a point where they hit a brick wall. And the more frequent those kind of below par performances are going to be, if players are knackered, exhausted, running on empty, you're more likely to get those kind of underwhelming displays, like the one we saw in the first half at Sunderland, and like the one we saw against Chelsea for most of the game, actually, if we're being brutally honest about it. But then you look at some of those players that would be coming in, and there's no doubt that there would be a drop-off, and there's no doubt that we'd be taking a bit of a risk and a bit of a gamble. And with Manchester City somehow, by the way, managing to get over the line yesterday, despite almost allowing Brentford, Fulham, I should say, to pull off the impossible, you look at it and they're 2 points behind us, man. And it's kind of like, just, you need to go out there, Arsenal. You need to go and do your job. And so, yeah, look, lots of the discussion in the lead up to this game will be with regards to rotation. How much rotation is too much rotation? I think that's always the really, really important question that you've got to ask yourself going into a game like this, because you can very, very easily change one or two players too much. And once you do that, you end up completely impacting the rhythm of the team, the fluidity. You then start to try and bring people off the bench to rectify what you've maybe got wrong from the off, and people come in, and not everybody's great at coming in from the cold and being expected to go out there and influence a game. So it's a really, really tricky one, this. Honestly, I think it's a really, really tricky one. But knowing Mikel the way that we do, as we touched on yesterday's pod, I'm pretty confident that he's going to go with an 11 that is as strong as possible from the outset. And if we get our noses in front and we manage to then extend that lead further, if we're 2-0 up, whatever, then you might see changes. You might see certain people being taken off around about the 70-minute mark to try and save them a little bit for what's to come at the weekend. But I just cannot see a world in which Mikel Arteta makes lots of changes tonight. And I could be wrong. Okay, I'm commentating on the game for Arsenal tonight. So when you watch the highlights back or the full match replay, it'll be myself and Perry Groves covering the game for the Arsenal app, website, and internal kind of TV stuff. And my prep for this game has been built around the idea, so it better be what happens, built around the idea that Mikel Arteta is just not going to take any risks tonight. I just can't see it. I can't see it. It's interesting because since losing that first ever Premier League meeting that we had with Brentford back in August 2021, and we all remember it, we went to the G-Tech, we got physically bullied. Arsenal are now unbeaten in their last 7 against the Bees. We've drawn on a couple of occasions, but we've won on 5 others. Brentford are winless in their last 7 away games against Arsenal across all competitions. And that is since a 2-0 league win back in April 1938. Arsenal have won 10 of their last 12 evening kickoffs in the Premier League, though their last defeat was in a home London derby match, and that was against West Ham back in December 23. Brentford have won just 1 of their last 11 midweek Premier League games, with that coming in their last such match against Nottingham Forest in May. Arsenal have won 6 of their last 7 home Premier League matches, including each of the last 3 in a row. The Gunners haven't won 4 consecutively at the Emirates since between April and August 2024. Brentford have won 4 of their last 23 Premier League London derby matches, with all 4 of those wins coming against either Crystal Palace or West Ham. So they've got an okay record in the derbies. No, sorry, they've got a poor record in the derbies is what I was looking for there. But when they have shown glimmers of hope, it's been against Palace and West Ham, lesser sides, I think it's fair to say. Okay, what do we do with the team? That's what we're all here to discuss. A big hello, by the way, to everyone who is with us on the show at the moment. Thank you all so much. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, guys, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All of that stuff really does help. If you're listening to us on Apple or on Spotify, do what you need to do. And if you want to check us out on Patreon, going one further, you can do that should you wish to do so. Right, shall we start to talk about the lineup then? That's what we're here to do today. Okay, let's try and figure out what Mikel Arteta is going to do. And we'll sort of chat our way through that. But I'm going to share with you ultimately the 11 that I would pick, because I think just about, and I've gone back and forth on this in my own mind many times over the last couple of days. I think I just about agree with the idea of going as strong as possible. Look, unless someone's an injury doubt, and that's different. But look, David Raya against his former club, keep him in between the sticks. He's been outstanding. Seen some people saying that maybe Ben White should come into this game. With the uncertainty around the rest of our defense, I'm going to say I'm against that. I don't know if Saliba is going to be available. There is a chance, but I don't know. And obviously, Calafiori went off at half-time in the game against Chelsea. Most people think that that was due to him being on a booking, which I agree with. We haven't had any word of a potential injury, but Calafiori is someone that you can never be sure of in terms of his availability and his fitness. He always makes me nervous. So, look, assuming that William Saliba doesn't make it, or that, you know, there's any risk associated with him playing, then I'm going with Mosquera and Nkapie as the centre-backs again. I think in a game like this, it's probably one that we're going to be able to cope with it better. But obviously, you got to factor in Brentford's approach. Brentford are a long ball, direct, very physical team, like to cause people problems from long throw-ins. And while having a Saliba or a Gabriel would be far better, given that, you know, physically they're just on another level, those two, I feel like if there's any question mark even around William Saliba, we can't take the risk with Villa to come. And so many more important games on the horizon, particularly with Big Gabby out. So my defense for tonight is Raya in goal. I'm going Timber right back, Mosquera and Nkapie in the 2 centre-half positions, with Ricardo Calafiori playing on the left side. In the midfield, I've seen lots of chat saying that, you know, Zubimendi or Rice or both need a rest. Well, you can't rest both, that's for sure. And I'm going to make the case that says you shouldn't rest Zubimendi either. Zubimendi only played an hour, if that, against Chelsea at the weekend. In fact, I think it was slightly less than the hour that he played. So this idea that he'll be completely burnt out, Well, it might be true, but if you're going to play in a team like ours, if you're going to compete for multiple trophies, if you want to compete in this league and be a part of what's happening at Arsenal, you need to be able to get back out there and do a job for us. And I just think that, without Zubimendi, our ball progression is nowhere near as good. I think it's important that we move the ball through the lines really, really quickly in a game like tonight's, where we're going to face undoubtedly a low block for the most part. And so I think Zubimendi's key, and the fact that he only played an hour at Chelsea means there's no reason to leave him out today. Declan Rice has to play for me. He's in brilliant form. I thought he was our best player at Chelsea, probably. You go back to the game against Bayern, where he was just unreal. He's in a great vein of form at the moment. Declan Rice can handle it. So, I want to see him in the starting 11. Now, the other question is what happens, or the big question, I suppose, in the midfield is what happens in addition to those two. Do you go with Eberici Eze, who's played a lot of football recently, and has scored goals in that game against Tottenham Hotspur and looked brilliant? Do you perhaps, include him in the 11, even with Martin Odegaard returning to fitness? Or do you look at it slightly differently and say, maybe this is the opportunity to give Eze the breather that he hasn't been able to have while Martin Odegaard has, of course, been absent? I think I'm going to start Odegaard. I think I'm going to start Odegaard in the midfield. I think tonight is a night for Odegaard. Having said that, if Leandro Trossard's not fit, now if Trossard is fit, I'm playing him on the left-hand side because I think this is a game for him where we're going to need someone with his guile, with his creativity, with his goal-scoring ability. If he is fit and available, Trossard plays on the left for me. But if he's not, I'm going to play Eze there. Because I think that playing a Martinelli from the start against a low block side like Brentford, I feel like is a bit of a waste of a time. I didn't really enjoy Madueke's performance at Chelsea. I have to say that. He didn't look as direct. He didn't look as adventurous. He looked distracted. He was on the left-hand side, and I thought that was to give us some width, yet he kept coming narrow and almost being drawn into the crowd, which is exactly what Chelsea probably wanted from him. Yeah, I didn't enjoy Madueke's performance. I have to say, look, Saka for me has to play on the right. Too important a game, as every game is at the moment. And then at centre forward, there's the question of Merino or Gyökeres. I don't know how fit Gyökeres is. He obviously came on in the second half at Stamford Bridge, but where he's at in terms of, sort of readiness to start a game from the beginning, I really don't know. If he is ready, I'd start him because I feel like Merino could probably do with a breather as well. But there is a part of me that looks at this and thinks, given we're going to face a low block, actually, Merino is probably better off playing in this game than he is playing at the weekend against Villa, where Unai Emery is going to play with a high line because that's what Unai Emery does. In which case, we could really benefit from Gyökeres' ability to run in behind, his willingness to spin off of defenders and go beyond the back line. And so there's a part of me that thinks play Merino tonight. And, we know that Merino can do a job. He's done an excellent job in recent times. Maybe use Gyökeres off the bench to try and build his fitness up just a little bit more ahead of the weekend. But I'd be looking at Gyökeres and saying, you're my guy for Villa away. And again, I've talked about it. Maybe we shouldn't be looking beyond this match. Maybe that's a dangerous thing to do. But I do feel like there has to be an element of that. There has to be an element of that. If you've got a player like Victor Gyökeres whose condition is the way it is, whereby, he might not, well, in fact, he probably cannot play 2 games in a week right now. I think you've probably got to make this type of decision. And it's not like Mikel Merino's been rubbish and he's not scoring goals or creating or getting involved in the build-up and that he's been largely ineffective. Like sometimes you look at a player and you go, that's not working. I need to get this guy out of the team. And that would make you, I suppose, more inclined to go, even if this player is not 100%, I'm going to throw him in because I really need him because what I've got out there is not good enough. There are a lot of people out there that will tell you that they don't mind Mikel Merino playing up front over Gyökeres. Like that's how little there is between them. I've talked about Gyökeres' absence a lot since he got injured. I've talked about what he brings that Merino doesn't. I've talked about what he can do that Mikel Merino simply can't. Obviously, there are differences, but Mikel Merino's played his game brilliantly, I think, of late. And And I think, having Trossard in the team, if indeed he's available, or Eze, whichever one it is playing from the left-hand side, those are my two choices. I think Marino benefits from that because those are probably the two players in this side that I would argue he links up best with. So just to confirm, my 11 to play Brentford tonight would be Raya in goal, Timber at right back, Calafiori at left back. If Saliba is fit, I would play him alongside Nkapie. But if there is any doubt about his condition whatsoever, I'd continue with the pairing of Mosquera and Nkapie. My midfield would be Zubimendi, Rice, and Odegaard. If fit enough, I'd play Trossard from the left-hand side, Saka from the right, and Mikel Merino up front. If Trossard cannot play and he's not ready to play, then I'd stick Eze on the left-hand side because he's in decent form in terms of contributions. And I feel like against the low block, there's no point in having a space runner. You need someone with a bit more guile, with a bit more creativity, someone that can come into those half spaces, come across the edge of the penalty area and make things happen. And as much as I felt like the game bypassed Eberechi Eze at Stamford Bridge, and that wasn't the first time I've said that this season, this kind of feels like a game that is far more suited to his skill set and to what he would bring to the table. So that is my team to face Brentford this evening. Let's take a really, really short pause. And when we come back, I'll get a few of your questions and thoughts. If you've put questions into the live chat box, please do copy and paste them back in after the break because they would have got lost somewhere in the chat box. And it just makes it easier for me to find them in the crowd of comments. Really, really brief pause. And we'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner with me, Harry Symeou. Like and subscribe. Chris says, I want to see Dalman on the bench. He's a game changer. I think it was last night. Was it last night? But I think he scored some goals. Hold on. Arsenal under 9. Was it under 19s? Let me just have a quick look. Sorry, 18s. I meant to type. Under 19s is the bloody Champions League thing, isn't it? They do it differently, obviously. Results and fixtures. What am I looking at? November. No, this is the wrong season. Anyway, I did. Was there a game last night for the youth team? I might be wrong. I saw something flash up on social media. I might be wrong. Anyway, look, I'm not against Max Dalman being part of the group and part of the setup. If he's available to be, you just wonder with sort of Jesus coming back into the picture, Gyökeres coming back into the picture, if we're still going to have those spaces on the substitutes bench to get him in. But he's a really exciting player. And I want to see him in and around the first team as much as possible. But he's also got to play. He's also got to play regularly. And what you can't do, I don't think, with a player of that sort of age is go, I'm going to keep you on the bench, probably not going to use you. But in doing so, I'm going to stop you playing under 18s, under 21s games. You can't have that because he's got to be playing as well. So there's that fine line between sort of giving him what he wants and what he's sort of really excited about, which is being part of the first team. But at the same time, you can't stop him playing matches. Skillman Swift says Eze is tired and needs a rest. Kevin Donnelly says perfect time to get Odegaard back on track. Maybe Eze on the left until Leo is back. Scrap Martinelli against the low block. I pretty much agree with that. Guitar Solo says H is a propagandist. Is that what you call them? Propagandists. We've not enjoyed Eze's performances either, except for 1 week. That has not stopped you from constantly putting him in your team. Yeah, look, I've said it many times that I think there have been games that have bypassed him, but I like to have players that I know are capable of making a difference, that I know have got a bit of skill in their locker that will create something and unlock a defense that will, take a shot from the edge of the box that could end up being a difference in terms of the result. I always believe that you need game changers on the pitch. And if you go back to many, many pods from last season, often I talked about that. I often said we don't have enough players that can produce a bit of of magic or brilliance wriggle free of someone and fire it in the top corner. And I even said that, yes, sometimes, we look at what Martinelli's doing, for instance, just as a comparison. It's not to have a go at Martinelli, but sometimes we look at him and we go, work rate, work rate, work rate. And it's great. And he gets his flowers for that. And rightly so, as he should. But we sometimes overlook that at times he hasn't had that ability to be a game changer. And sometimes those game changer types, they're passengers in a lot of other aspects of the game. And you have to decide whether you think and believe that carrying them in terms of work rate and effort and in terms of other things is worth the potential upside if they can come alive in the right space at the right time. So I've never said that Eze's been perfect. I pick him in my team, and I picked him in my team every week because we had no Martin Odegaard. Now that Martin Odegaard's back, as long as he can get back on track in terms of his form, then there's no reason why we can't have the debate around whether or not Eze should be playing. But in the absence of Odegaard, in the absence of Martinelli, who's only just come back, in the absence of Trossard, in the absence of Madueke, all of these guys have been out. Of course, Eze was going to be in the team. Of course, he was going to be in the team. Come on. Let's take this one from Daniel. Who says, did you see the overlap the other day? I haven't seen it, mate. He says, when the Arsenal fan said, if we win the league and the Champions League, Rice would be a contender for the Ballon d'Or. Everyone laughed. Why can't people have a proper discussion? Look, if you win those two competitions, then you should you should be allowed, without it being ridiculed, to push forward one of your most important players and say, put this guy into the into the conversation, or put this guy into the nominees list. But I always feel like with players like Declan Rice, as much as he's ultra effective, people look for a bit more flair, I think, when they're talking about the Ballon d'Or. And, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I think you can be super effective and have zero flair. And I'm not saying that Declan Rice has got zero flair, but you get where I'm going with this. But there's a kind of snobbery around the Ballon d'Or whereby it feels like you've got to play the game in a certain way for the majority to get behind you. And Declan Rice might not be that guy. I know Rodri won it, but you would argue that Rodri is a bit more of a polished central midfielder, or at least was at the beginning of Declan Rice's Arsenal career. Again, look, Rodri won it, yes, and that was the right decision, in my opinion, at the time. But it's only once that we've seen a player like Rodri in recent years win it. Normally, it's your Messis, it's been your Ronaldos, it's been people like Dembele that have been talked about in recent seasons. There was a point where Coutinho was being talked about. These are all types of players that are flair first. And so I'm not saying it's impossible to win the Ballon d'Or unless you're a flair first player, but it certainly helps. And that is why, because of that snobbery and because of that culture around it, that's why you end up with people laughing at suggestions like that. But it's not a funny claim at all. It makes a lot of sense. Modric absolutely is a flair player, Scully. Cannavaro, flair centre-half, confident, comfortable on the ball. You're naming players that have an aura about them that we can see Declan Rice has, but not everyone will feel that way because for whatever reason, when you play for Arsenal, you have to do a lot more for people to actually stand up and respect what you're doing. If we were to win the Premier League and the Champions League, is a big if, then Declan Rice should certainly be in the mix. Here we go. Jid calling me an agenda guy again. I'm still waiting for you to tell me when you're free, because we put a date in, but you said you couldn't make it. So I'm still waiting for you to tell me when you're free so that we can actually have this debate, because you keep saying stuff like that. This is what you said today. Sorry, Harry, that is pure waffle. You're assigning different standards for your favorite players. You are saying Eze can be a passenger in a way that Madueke and others you don't deem fit can't be, because he's a game changer. You think the likes of Madueke and Martinelli, who have literally changed games, aren't game changers and don't deserve the same leeway you give Eze? Have you completely lost your mind? I just said 2 minutes ago, pretty much 2 minutes ago, that Eze had to be in my team because we were without Madueke, we were without Martinelli, we were without Odegaard, we're without Leandro Trossard. And so if I take Eberechi Eze out of the team, what flair and creativity and spark do I have in the team? Zero. Like, I don't get what's so difficult to understand about that. Now that those guys are back, if Eze doesn't perform, we can have the conversation. And you want to take him out of the 11? Take him out of the 11. Look at my 11 on the screen. He's not in it. Jude says, I sent you a message and you didn't respond. You sent me a message saying that you couldn't make the day that we'd originally arranged, but there wasn't any alternative in there. So let's get that sorted. Right. Let's take one or two more of your questions before we sign out today. What have we got in here? Let's just scroll through and see what you guys are saying. MMH says these conversations on the overlap are just for rage bait. There's no genuine football analysis. No, I think that's a little bit unfair. I think like some of the guys on there, I know them. Kwaku, who was on this pod last week when we were building up to the Chelsea game, was on there. I haven't seen it in full, but the clip I saw of him, I thought he spoke brilliantly. Maybe I'm biased because he's a friend and a colleague, but there is good people on there as well. But you know what the agenda is going to be before it's even sort of materialized as a conversation, don't you? And that's the frustrating thing, I suppose. Daniel just backing up his point. He says, this proves my point. People being reactionary to a normal football conversation, not actually listening to what you're saying. Guitar Solo says, now they are back. You want to shoehorn Eze in at left wing, H. You are gaslighting. No, I said I'd play Eze on the left wing if Trossard is not available tonight. Why? Because Madueke is definitely better on the right. Martinelli needs space. There isn't going to be any space tonight, I don't think, unless we score first and early. Again, I keep using this phrase, horses for courses. There are certain games that suit certain players. And people don't like my opinion. You don't like it. No problem. I don't like some of yours. It is what it is. That's life. Get on with it. Move on. It's not the end of the world. I just think for me, we've had no choice but to use Eze as much as we have. And even though there have been games in recent weeks, and I've called them out many, many times, where I've come away from the game and gone, he wasn't at it today. He didn't offer anything today. I think because we've got players missing, and we've had players missing, some of those have returned now, there was no real choice but to include him. Now, if he doesn't perform, he's out because the competition's back. That's how it should work. Why is that a problem? I don't get it. Anyway, look, we're going to sign out. Thank you all so much for joining me on today's episode of the pod. We're going to be back, of course, on Thursday morning. We'll be looking back at the Brentford game. There'll be a Patreon piece on Thursday as well. So if you want to sign up and become a patron, now's a great time to do so. You can do that via the QR code in the top corner of your screen. If you're watching us, if you're listening to us, it's patreon.com/The Chronicles of Aguna. The link is in the description below. Come over, sign up. You get ad-free access to every single episode. Plus, you get membership to our Discord server as well as bonus content. The next piece of which, as I say, will be with you all tomorrow. That's my team to face Brentford. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to sign out with a prediction. I'm going to go for Arsenal 2, Brentford 0. I think we'll just about do enough. Catch you all soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Chronicles of Aguna. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of Aguna. Harry, send me you time. Come on, you gunners.